This
Okay,
conference will now be recorded.
go.
Okay. Hey, want to welcome everybody. This is our first time trying a kind of a recorded video. We're going to send this out to our customers. We're doing something a little bit different today. We typically have, 4 meetings a year at Dakota Plains where we, around the major reports, where we kind of unpack the reports and we talk about kind of what's trending in the markets, what's trending with grain marketing, and we usually give you guys some ideas. So we're going to do that today with White Commercial Scott Hansen. We're right in the middle of a coronavirus social distancing, so there's a lot of people working from home. Our offices were closed. Our board made this request last week, so grain buyers like myself are working remotely. You can see my artwork in the back. It's very primitive and very good. So we're doing the best we can, but we wanted to get this information out to you. We typically have Scott come to our elevator once a year, and he has a good following with our guys, and we are going to put this out on our website. We're going to email it out. We have about 380 people on our email list, and we probably will put it out on our social media channels as well. So just a background about Dakota Plains. We are a shuttle shipper in the southeast South Dakota. We have 2 locations at Parkston and Yankton, and we are on the BNSF Railway, and we primarily serve the PNW market. And we serve about 500 unique customers a year. And like I said, we have about 380 on an email that this could go out to. So we have, we've gained a nice following at our meetings by having this cadence of 4 times a year. So we didn't want our customers to miss out on this information. So we thank you for your business. We thank you for watching today. And, we're going to try this, and there might be more to come. Scott and I kind of talked before we started recording here. There might be more of this to come. So give us your feedback. Let us know what you like, how we can make it better. Obviously, we're not great at technology here, so forgive Scott and I for maybe not having the best, setup here or whatever, but we're going to do the best we can today. So the format today is we're going to have a conversation about grain marketing. We're going to kind of get Scott's ideas on unpacking some of this planting intentions report, and then I think he's got some really tangible things to throw out for you guys to use in your marketing plans today. So with that, I'm going to open it up, and I just want Scott to tell the group a little bit about himself and his background, just maybe briefly here.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Greetings from Griswold, Iowa. In my office here, I'm the only person in the building, so I am social distancing from everyone right now. I've been in the business now with White Commercial for 29 years. Before that, I was the manager of a grain elevator in Griswold, Iowa for 12 years. So I've been around the business for quite a while, and I'll just tell you real briefly about White Commercial. This is White Commercial. All those blue dots you see on the screen represent the companies that we work with at White Commercial here. As you can see, we're in 26 or 27 states and a couple provinces up in Canada. So yeah, that's White Commercial. We work with grain elevators and feed mills on their hedging, merchandising, and working with you folks. So that's what we do.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you, we're in a crazy time right now. I mean, you said, did you say 29 years in the business?
Yeah.
Scott? So I'm sure you've seen a lot of things in your life, and even though you're only 32, you've been in this business 29. But put this in perspective of your entire career.
Yeah, okay, it's real simple. Anybody that says we've been through something like this is nuts. When you hear people describe the perfect storm and a confluence of events that have happened, I mean, just look at the last year. First, we've dealt with the issues regarding the tariffs and trade issues. Then you get the first outbreak in China of the coronavirus and expanding in their difficulties, and then decided to share it with the rest of us. And then on top of that, you throw in, just for good enough measures, if it wasn't crazy enough, you throw into a situation where Saudi Arabia and the Russians decide to get in a contest of who can be the biggest jerk in the oil markets. And so we see the dramatic drop in gasoline and fuel prices worldwide, causing a lot of chaos there. So, I mean, anybody that says they've seen anything like this before, I would question whether or not they could accurately make that statement. The closest, not that we're in a depression, but the closest thing I could think of would be like the World War I or II or the Great Depression. But, you know, there's just a lot going on. There's just a lot going on, and there's a lot of uncertainty out there. But, you know, we still got to raise the grain. We still got to market it.
Yep. So one thing I really like about white commercial, and what we try to do at Dakota Plains too, is we try to give real tangible ideas to the farm. You know, we don't really get into technical analysis or, you know, all these charts that you maybe see other groups put out there. So what are you seeing farmers doing right now with, as far as marketing goes, with elevators? What are, you know, you think of between now December, now we're April 1, what are some of the things that you see farmers doing with elevators right now?
Right. Well, you know, the big thing is that we did have the report yesterday. That's going to be part of it, and you know, there's just some things there that we need to talk about. And forgive me, in the slides we have here, that I've got just a couple things that we're going to hop around a little bit. So we'll probably go back and forth. Just be patient with it. What I will tell you is this: is that right now, because of the uncertainty, there is one thing that we do know when it comes to marketing right now. We're just at the very early stages. Right here in Griswold, we're actually starting to see quite a few guys in the field right now. They're actually getting out there, being able to put some anhydrous on the ground that didn't get it last fall. I'm really got to say, I'm surprised at the amount of anhydrous going out. That tells me a lot of corn acres, which is what the report told us yesterday. You know, the one thing I will tell you is this: over the next 3 to 4 months, when we're getting into that early stages of growing the crop, it's going to be too something somewhere. It's going to be too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry in the next 4 months somewhere. It happens every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
It happens absolutely every year. And so that's where that uncertainty of this time right now really, for the people that are the good marketers.
Yep.
They've done their work. They've done their homework ahead of time. They have a plan. They know what it cost them to raise it. They have ideas about profit per acre that they want to capture. That translates into target prices where they know they need to be able to sell the grain to get their objectives met. I don't know where we're going to be. We're going to get into the numbers here, I'm sure, in a little bit. But the reality of it is that the people that have a plan in place when they go to the field, and the things in place, whether it's signing up for one of the programs you guys offer through the Cargill programs, pro pricing and those kinds of things, or whether it's as simple as, I know that I need to sell 5% of my corn crop that I think I'm going to raise when it gets to this price. And Colin, when it gets there, I want you to call me and tell me it's done. And that it can be as simple as that, or as sophisticated as you want to be. But the important thing is you have a plan out there, and you actually make sure you take the action to make it happen. The other thing that I will tell you is that we do know that there is a lot of corn still and beans still out on the farm that have to move. So this is also the same time of year when we've got to be focused on not only getting rid of our new crop bushels, but we got to be thinking about our old crop bushels and making sure we get those sold as well. And I think as we go through some of the things today, when we get into talking about it, I think you're going to see the reason for that, why it's so important.
So I'm looking at your screen right now that you have up, your slide here,
Yeah.
and that's White Commercial's footprint, and you guys are serving elevators. Is the elevator still relevant in the marketplace? We've heard a lot of discussion that we're going out of business, or there's other business models that are king and this and that. Is the elevator still relevant?
Absolutely. I mean, the elevators like Dakota Plains are your partner. And unfortunately, as time goes, and there's people out there that are trying to, we call them disruptors, right? That try and say, no, Dakota Plains is the middleman. They're just taking money out of my pocket. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Nothing could be absolutely farther than the truth. The job and the function of elevators like Dakota Plains is to collect and then redistribute to the marketplace. They provide markets when the farmers need cash and when they need to sell. Their job then is to then supply the end user market when it needs the grain. Now, most farmers would say, well, I could just sell direct. Well, here's the thing. The objectives on both ends of the equation, the end users and the producers, they have contrary objectives, right? The farmer wants the best price he can for his grain. The end user wants the cheapest price for his grain. When do those two things happen at the same time? That's
Never.
the role that Dakota Plains can function in the middle. They can provide the markets when the prices are good to the producers, and then when the prices are at good levels where the end user is really active in wanting to buy those bushels, he can go out and buy them. So, I mean, to me, that's where guys like yourself and your team at Dakota Plains that are in the origination side of things, they're the real partners with the producers, because they're the ones that can help that producer come up with a marketing plan that really is going to help them be successful. And the thing that's most important about that is your guys know your farmers. You know them. You know their aptitude for risk. You know their aptitude for their desires and needs going forward. So, I mean, you can really become their partner and help them get what they want to help make everybody better. And if we can get the farmer to do a good job selling his crops to Dakota Plains and people like them, I mean, everything else will be fine. Dakota Plains will be just fine if that happens. So that's the whole key. It's more, I would make the case that it's absolutely more relevant today than it's ever been, because, farmers are getting bigger. They need to have partners that they can depend on when they need it. They need places to dump the grain when they need to dump grain. And that's the role that nobody else but folks like Dakota Plains can provide. I'd challenge anybody to challenge that.
Yeah, I remember earlier on when some of the other companies were out in the country, and actually had a farmer tell me that one of them was gonna maybe run a certain business out of business, and I thought about it a lot, and I can do, or Dakota Plains can do one thing that somebody else that's just kind of doing contracts out there, is we can actually receive grain, and we can provide that tangible service of a place for a farmer to deliver. And I continue to go back to that, is that real service of taking grain from farmers. And we can do a lot of things marketing wise, through our facilities too. So marrying those two things, the grain marketing with taking actual delivery and providing that service, is something that's motivated me to be active on social media and different things. So that's been a lot of fun to kind of propose that out in the marketplace. So thanks for your answer. I think that was really good. So you mentioned a little bit about Griswold, but so what do you think field conditions are? You travel all throughout this Midwest area. What do you think field conditions are as far as we're setting up here? April 15th, April 10th is a planting date. are field conditions better than a year ago or worse?
Well, yes, normally you would be correct that I would be traveling. I haven't gone anywhere for the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I can only go by what I'm hearing from people that I talk to every day. But, um, I think my observation would be this: when I look at overall compared to a year ago, um, are there spots? Go back to something I said at the very beginning. Are there spots where it's too wet? Yes. Are there spots where it's too dry? Yes. Um, Too cold, too hot? I would say that going into this year, for the most part, I would say that subsoil moisture going in is really good. Um, Compared to a year ago, I mean, it's not as wet in some places. I mean, we don't have the flooding going on yet. Hopefully, we don't run into any of that. Knock on wood. Um, I I would say overall, we're in good shape for going in. I mean, I think most places are coming along nicely towards the areas like your area up there. You're still what, couple weeks from people really getting in the field, scratching around typically.
Yeah. I mean, yes.
And I mean, we've got guys in the field here now, which is probably, I would say, a little earlier than normal. And that's why I'm surprised at the amount of activity that's out there, because I thought most of the anhydrous was on already, and there's still a lot of tanks running around. So, I think for the most part, things are going well. I mean, compared to a year ago, you'd say it's somewhat similar probably. I mean, but we're in pretty good shape going in. I mean, when we go in
Yeah.
with water in the ground, it's never a bad thing.
Yep. I was out and about a lot in February and got on a lot of farms. And I asked that same question, if we're better or worse than we were a year ago, field wide conditions. And overwhelmingly, guys in our trade territory in southeast South Dakota, south central South Dakota, said they were in a better spot. We
Yeah.
have had some moisture since then, in March here. Um, we're going to need a little bit of an open spring to get everything done
Yeah.
and everything planted. But, I think we're still in a better spot than we were uh, a year ago. And, it's April 1 now. We have until June 10th, we've learned that we can plant this thing. So
Right.
hopefully we get a window to do it. So I want to jump into the report. We had a report yesterday, March 31, planting intentions report. What's your
Yeah.
takeaways from the report, Scott? What's your
Well,
takeaways?
okay, so bear with me a little bit, because as you shared with the guys here that this is new, right? So the technology here, we're going to try a little shading on this puppy right here. How about that? Look
Wow,
at
I'm
me.
impressed.
That 97, okay, that's rounded. The actual report on corn acres came out at 96.99 bushels, or million acres to be planted. I did the calculations on historical averages. That means that we will historically plant or harvest about 90% plus a little bit of the acres for corn. That turns into that 88.2 million acres. I just went through some what ifs based on the numbers with the last supply demand report. That's all I did. I've plugged in 180 bushels. That's trend line yield into this report. Add in the beginning stocks on the last supply demand report. The production with that many acres at trend line yield comes out with 15.8 billion bushels of corn. Imports, I just didn't change any of the numbers other than the acres and put in the yield. All these usages down here are the same as what it was in the last report. 54 billion bushels, or 5.4 billion bushels of corn going into ethanol. for a total of food, seed, and industrial uses of 66,800,000 bushels. Gives us a total usage of 12.345 with exports of 1725. That was what was in the last report. I'm not arguing the points of any of these numbers. I'm just plugging in the usage numbers that we had in the last one. The reason I did all that was to show you guys this. This number right here at the very bottom. That's 3.7 billion bushels of carryout if usage stays the same, or a stocks to use ratio of 26.6%. Notice the number in the last supply demand report, 13.5%. That is a problem. It's that simple. That is a problem if this happens like this. We almost double the carryout. Now, I think we have to be aware with what's happened in the world. Ethanol has virtually come almost to a screeching halt. The plants that are still operating have reduced dramatically. So a lot of plants have shut down for indefinite periods of time. So the thing to remember is this first column over here. This is the last supply and demand report that we had in first part of March. That still had 5.4 billion bushels in ethanol. I think everybody would say right now, not no way, not no how is that going to happen. I'm not here to talk to you today about where I think that number is going to be, because anybody that really knows that for sure isn't saying, because there isn't anybody like that. So it's safe to say that our beginning stocks that we're going to have, or our ending stocks at the end of August, that plugs into this number over here in next year's crop, is probably going to be higher than where it is now, which means next year's carryout could be higher. That's if we can get ethanol demand back to where it was. So I hate to be negative Nelly, but the reality of it is that there's a lot of things out there that are probably going to be not too good.
So within minutes of that report hitting yesterday, I started getting text messages from farmers.
Yeah.
Them doing revenue calculations about, does corn or beans make sense? Does this report and the economics force I hate to use the word force, but does the farmer consider switching going to more beans because it's the least cost, inputs, and maybe if they can kind of make the same amount of profit, does it make sense to think about more beans or something else?
Well, here's how I would answer that question, Colin. That's a great question. And the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
I mean, because each guy's different. Each guy's comparative profile is different. That's why these numbers that you and I always talk with our producers about knowing your cost of production, knowing your yields, your profile production-wise for both of the crops, right? And then you make your own decision based on your numbers, how they work out. Because if you and I are both farmers, and we might have farms next to each other, but our farming practices may be a little different. Our seed that we use may be a little different. Of course, I would be using the good seed, you'd be using the bad seed, but that's beside the point. What it goes down to is that it still matters what my numbers tell me I should do, right? Because we got to remember that there's two things that are most important. The two main components that lead to our result in the end is yield times price. A combination of those two things, right? That gets us, as it compares to what it cost us to raise it, what gets us our end result. So each guy has to do his own calculation. Maybe what we ought to do, Colin, if I could, is just go over here real quick. Now, let's see how this works.
Yeah, you did that. I got a quick comment on that. That's so true what you bring up. I actually, I have a privilege to work with, dozens of farms, and I actually have farms that I work with that are neighbors, and I know, they're a mile or two apart, that how the economics work on their farm. One farm would rather go heavy beans because they kind of have a secret sauce for beans, whereas the farm a mile down the road is set up to and more profitable if they plant heavy corn. So it is really farm specific, and that's really interesting you say that. So, and that's one thing that I've tried to talk about with my farms too, is at the end of the day what matters is revenue, and revenue is price times yield. So you have to
Right.
maximize your price and maximize your yield, and at the end of the day revenue is all that that covers your costs. So I'm
Right.
I'm totally in alignment there. So
It's that natural thing, right? So here's what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip ahead here a little bit
yep,
because I think that it'd be good to maybe review the bean numbers
yep,
as well.
great,
Um, what they came up with was basically their estimate is 83.51 million acres. Now, there's an interesting thing that most people should know. There is a trend involving the March planting intentions report. And we all know that as we go through time, these acres can change, right? I mean, you get that, Colin.
yeah,
It can always change going forward. I mean, if just look at last year, that number we had on last year, acres planted, was much different than what we had this time a year ago, right? Um, without a doubt. So, one thing that comes true about the tendency of the planting intentions versus what actually happens in soybeans is that that acres planted has a tendency to go up.
yep,
It usually goes up about 1 million or so acres
yeah,
over time. And I think people have asked me why that is, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's people that intend on planting corn, and they may wind up with some ground every year that somebody does that's too wet to get planted with corn. They wind up switching to beans. So that's typical. But if we just look at this and we take the normal reduction of acres planted versus acres harvested, get to a little over 82 million acres of corn, and we throw in trend line yield is about 50.5 bushels with beginning stocks of 424. Go through those same calculations. We're using the same usage numbers as that we have in this year's report. We wind up at the end with 13.2% stocks to use ratio, or 537, a slight increase in ending stocks. Quite honestly, that's probably why you see the market reacting like it has since the report. It is an increase, but when you look at usage, the odds are pretty good that it's not going to have the impact on ending stocks with the planted acres like we have in beans as we do in corn relatively, right? So I would say that this is a reason that a lot of people are doing those very calculations that you were just talking about, Colin, that we have to be able to say, okay, look, I've got to be able to do this and think about this and what's going to make the most sense.
yeah. Well, I put those numbers in my little spreadsheet as well, and I commend you for being courageous and putting them on here. Those are growing, ending stocks, but it's good to look at reality and what could happen.
Yeah.
This we have to get it in the ground, and we don't know how it'll play out, but this is really good information to have when you're making decisions in the next 2-3 months, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, and I know we're trying to keep this relatively short today, and I know we're probably
Yeah,
getting a little long-winded in it, but
yeah,
here I just want to share a couple things with you. I'll talk about beans first, and then we'll go back to corn. There's a
yep. And
couple
then I
things.
want to jump into like the tangible things that they could do today, and I got a
Yes,
couple other questions. So, yep.
absolutely, absolutely. Here's a couple things that I want to show you, and I may be heading off some of the questions you might have. This number right here that I've got showing up on the screen right now is absolutely. Are you still seeing the yellow on there?
Yeah, but we're amateurs, so it's okay.
Yeah, okay. They'll have to bear with us. Um, if you look at this, this is the trend of exports, right?
Yep.
For soybeans, with the total usage as well. Now, a lot of people have talked about, well, that we're opening China back up again, and they're expecting this big, huge increase in exports, potentially, possibly. Well, I want to point out a couple things. If you go back starting in 1975 to current year, the biggest year we've ever had in soybean exports is 2.1 billion bushels, and that was in just fairly recently in 2016, right? Now I'm going to go back to that previous slide, and I do want to point out the minimum goes back to 88 with about 500 million bushels. Now, here's what I want to point out to you. Right now, we've got 1.8 billion bushels of exports in this thing for China for beans. So even if we were able to go up on that, we could absorb some increase and still be okay on carryout. Usually people start getting super excited about soybean carryouts when they get down in that 200 billion bushel range or 200 million bushel range. So I think we're still okay with that. Now, here's what I will tell you if we go back here to the numbers in the corn again. With corn, if we look at this, the biggest export number we've ever had on corn is 2.438 billion bushels in 17. Okay. We've got in there right now for export 1.7 billion bushels. With the ethanol reduction, we may need almost a record export usage number to just be able to keep that number at that high number there. I'm just saying that it potentially could be a problem. So anyway, go ahead with your questions.
Well, so what are two things that a farmer could do right now to improve his marketing? What are some ideas that you got for him?
Okay.
Him.
Okay, so here's what I would do. The biggest problem that farmers have when it comes to marketing their grain, the frustration that I hear over and over again talking with farmers, is that they have a hard time making decisions, especially in an environment like this. They don't know what to do. Well, we're coming into that time of year that what matters most is deciding something, doing something. Doing nothing is where the end result turns out bad, typically. So what I would tell you is that history tells us that we're coming into the time of year when our best selling opportunities for both old and new crop are going to be taking place. And when I talk about new crop, I want to make a point here that we're not just talking about harvest delivery corn. We're also talking about getting grain sold for the time frames when you need money, whether that's January, March, July of next year, whatever the time frame is. The time to make those sales is during these rallies in the spring. There is no doubt about that. I can show you real quick exactly something to talk about why that's so important. This is the time of year we're in right now. These two lines right here vertically are this time frame that goes from the first part of May to the first part of July. That's typically when our rally comes, and that's to sell it for harvest delivery. And everybody always says, well, yeah, Scott, I understand what you're saying there. But what I would tell you is that it holds true no matter what. delivery period you're talking about. This is what I'm talking about. This is the history of July futures. And what I want to point out to you right now is that I'm going to try to draw this. We'll see how my artwork is. Not very good at straight lines, but this is that time frame that we just showed on that last one for harvest delivery. This is the history of the July futures. The timing of when we make the sales is the same, regardless of what the delivery period is. And Colin, you'll have all these charts to be able to share with the guys and put on your website that you want. But
Okay.
it's absolutely true. The thing to look at this is we take, I believe this is June 30, and it's all in reference to June 30. This line that goes across right here is June 30. So on average, you take the 3 and 5 year are the ones that are so high up here. Like for instance, both of these are close to 50 cents. That means that you could have sold it back here in May of the year before you harvest the crop, sell it for next June delivery, July delivery, and you'd have been 40 to 50 cents higher than it was when you got out there on June 30. That's what this chart shows you. It's not putting numbers in there. It's just showing the tendency. Now you look at it, most people like to go from harvest on, like this time frame on, right? When they do that, their focus becomes on, well, okay, I look at how the marketing goes from this point on this direction, right? And they say, well, yeah, look how much the value of carrying it from harvest until I got out there. But if you look at this chart, it shows you that many times all this rally from harvest on does is get you back up to a point where you could have sold before. And that's the thing to remember. So the two things that people have to do right now, they need to put in targets. They need to be part of an averaging program. They need to be part of your Cargill, what do you call them? Pacer.
Pacers are averaging.
Pacer averaging contract, and you've got your pro
pricing, and and we have portfolio builder now, which is all similar, that take care of are utilizing this time period is what they're all doing. So,
but my point is this, Colin. Now's the time to be sitting down and figuring out what mix of these tools you feel comfortable with using, and then putting them in place and let them do their work. Combine that with targets on some of the pricing too. I might want to put 10% on the pacer. I might want to take 10% on pro pricing. However you decide to do it, up to whatever level you feel comfortable pricing ahead of time. But now's the time you need to be taking action on this stuff. It doesn't mean sell today. It might mean you sell next week. We don't know when the best time to sell is going to be, but we do know it's probably going to come within the next 3 to 4 months. History tells us that. And the coronavirus, trade issues, oil things going on, I don't care what you want to talk about. The reality of it is that year in, year out, there's always stuff happening. And this is the time of year, because of the uncertainty about where we're at in the crop raising process. Now's the time to be taking action. So know your cost of production and have a plan to go forward. Those are my two things.
Those are great. My short time in the business, I've observed, and I always tried to challenge the guys that I work with to have their target orders entered in with us or whoever they have them in with before they get in the planter.
Yes.
Because I've learned if they don't have them in before they get in the planter, and then they start spraying, and they're just busy, and the market's rallying, it's just too hard to put them in that time period. So I'm 100% with you. Get a plan and get your targets in before you hit the planter. And the other thing is we're not talking about, and you mentioned it, selling your whole crop. It's, we're taking small bites, 10% increments or, on each of one of these tools. So I'm 100% with you, Scott, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So
And what I would tell you, Colin, just one last thought on that is that's a question, probably the most popular asked question I get after when should I sell, right? Is how much should I be willing to sell ahead? And I have a real simple answer to that. I would not feel comfortable forward contracting more than what your crop revenue insurance coverage covers. In other words,
correct.
if you've got a 200 bushel an acre APH and you're at 80%, you can't sell over 160 bushels an acre.
Right.
That's a safe way to do it. So that's what I would do.
Yeah. And those are reasons why we have Dylan and Jeff and myself, Tyrone. We want to make sure everybody has a chance to meet with somebody and have somebody serve them and get to know their operation so we can stress test those percent sold.
Yeah.
So I have guys that are comfortable being sold up to their crop insurance. And I have guys that, are only comfortable selling what they have to move at harvest or less than. So there's a wide range, and that's why we try to provide that service of really drilling down and figure out what they need and what they want and what they're comfortable with. So,
right.
It's farm specific. So talking about all that, we got two things. We kind of learned the report. What are the takeaways there? I kind of look to you, Scott, in my own career as kind of that guy that you can call and he's going to say, you know what, it's going to be all right. Or I've been through something like this, or kind of like that uncle you call when you need business advice. That's you, Scott, for me.
Thanks.
So,
I appreciate that.
So how do you stay positive in this coronavirus? We have ethanol slowdowns. We have trade wars.
Yeah.
It feels like we're just getting kicked in the what every week here. How do you stay positive?
Well, I'll be honest with you. This is something that I am a little uncomfortable talking about, but I'm not afraid to share it. Is my faith number one?
Yeah.
I mean, there's somebody up there that's got a plan for all of us, and while at times it may seem like he's not paying attention, he is, and he will take care of us. But what I do know is this: I believe in the American farmer. I believe in the fundamental system of the world economy. I know that some people are out there that are shaken by this, but I do know that anytime we go through tough periods, every time we always come out with a better product or a better method going forward. What you go through in these challenging times test you, and they make you readjust. They make you think about what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. And invariably what happens is we come out the other side better for it. Now, when you're in the middle of it and when you see depressed prices, and we know that we're in a time frame here where it's not easy out there on the farm making ends meet. But we went through a tough time like this where, back in the late 70s, early 80s, where it was really tough on the farm too. I think it hasn't gotten to that point on the farm, but I will tell you this, that we came out of it better as a result. People got better at the way they look at their finances. I think that people can take this, they learn from it, and I prefer to believe that, okay, it's tough right now, but it's going to be better. It will be okay. I appreciate you saying that earlier because my wife gets a little upset with me because I do have a tendency to say that quite a bit. I said, honey, I know you're upset, but it will be okay.
Yeah.
You trust in the people around you. You get the farmers out there are so fortunate to have your organization to work with. You've got a great group of folks that really, really care about the producers. I mean, that's the thing that I would say, starting with Matt all the way to Kevin and all the guys outside. I mean, they care about these guys. And I mean, that's why we're trying to do things like reaching out like this today, is that we really want to help them, because you know what? We will be okay. But we still have to stay focused on what the job is at hand. And, you know, if we focus on that, the other stuff may fade away into the background for a little while. That's
Yeah.
the way I look at it. I mean, I have to be positive. I don't know how else to be.
Well, I appreciate it. That was really good insight and really good advice. As I reflect on my own situation here, a couple weeks ago, I had a conversation with a younger farmer who maybe had some cattle hedges on and maybe some margin calls, and he had lifted his hedges and kind of took some losses, and he was really wanting to get back in, and I don't know anything about cattle futures really, but I was kind of thinking about my own situation. I knew he had kids at home, and I said, just go home and hug those little kids and forget about trying to win it all back. And then in my own situation, I think about, at the end of the day, do I got enough food to feed my family through this social distancing? All the other stuff doesn't really matter. And it's really forced people to think about the essentials of life. And so I appreciate you sharing your faith. That's one thing that's helped me also, is relying upon, something bigger than me, that I don't have control over this, and I can only control what I can control, and having a positive attitude. And then my grandma Wilson always used to say she was a child of the dirty 30s and the Great Depression, and we all have grandparents or parents that were in that situation. But she always said, this too shall pass. And
yes,
so this won't last forever.
and
so,
it will. It absolutely will. You said something that really jogged my memory about it. All we can do when it comes to marketing is control the things that are controllable. I mean, you can't spend all your time worrying and endlessly worrying about, am I going to get the crop planted? Am I going to have a hailstorm? I mean, all the negative things that can happen. You know what? That's out of your control. That's why you buy the insurance, right? You address and do what you can. Marketing is exactly the same way. I mean, that's how you get through. You pay attention to things you control, and then that's by using these tools that we've talked about. That's the main thing.
That's great. So I think I got one more question before we wrap it up, and this actually comes from a farmer.
Okay.
I sent out an email last week that we were going to do this, and had a response. And one guy asked how so we've had some purchases from China on corn, and one was pretty substantial, and then there was another one last week. So how significant are those purchases, and do they make a difference, is kind of this guy's question.
Yeah. Let me go back here for a second, and I'll just go back to this as a place to start here, right? Yeah, I mean, that could be raising this number on exports, right, in the current year here. That's the first column. There's some hope that may be increasing it, and even if it's significant. But to go with that, I would tell you that, guys, we need that because of what's happening in that number above it, the ethanol.
Yeah.
That's the biggest factor. They're projecting that possibly gasoline prices could drop another 50 cents a gallon over the next couple months. That does not bode well for ethanol. And even if the country gets here within a month or two, open back up, it's not like demand is immediately going to be there, right?
Right.
There's going to be a lag time. So the effects of this are going to be long lasting. So, is it significant? I claim that it is significant. It's probably one of the reasons we've been able to hold up in the market, corn market, as well as we have. And most people would debate that whether or not that's an accurate statement, right? That we've lost quite a bit of ground here over the last couple months. But it could have been worse if it hadn't been for China coming in and buying that corn that they did. I would tell you this though, South American harvest is going on, and you know they're starting to get towards the end of their harvest, but they've had harvest down there that was pretty good. And when it comes to our markets in the export world, because the American currency, the American dollar is so strong, our exports are very expensive to these other countries. So that limits how much of our grain they can buy. So they're going to clean everybody out first before they come to us at this point, just from a relative cost standpoint. So, I mean, it's significant. Absolutely. We need them to be in the market to keep it from getting worse.
Okay. So I'm going to give you one shot here to recap. Is there anything that you wanted to say that I didn't ask about or we didn't cover? And if you want to recap or any closing comments, and then we'll turn it over after that. Is there any closing comments, Scott?
Yeah, I would just say one thing, and I'm going to put up a little picture here on the screen to illustrate my point. There's a couple things going on, okay? This is something, guys, that you got to be very careful to avoid, is shooting yourself in the foot. And how you can do that, if you really want a lesson in how to shoot yourself in the foot, what you do is you go to the field and you don't pay any attention to things and you don't take care of business when it comes to your marketing. Tailor-made way to shoot yourself in the foot. You know, we don't want that to happen to you. So to avoid that, use your targets, and you really have to figure out where it is that you want to go, set goals, identify times that okay, if I put targets in, if I'm following a plan, if I haven't got a certain percent of my crop sold by the 15th of June, then I need to do this, do that. Think ahead of time, but make sure you take those actions and put them in place. That action piece is, a lot of people do the first three, right, Cullen? I mean, you talk to a lot of guys that do the first three. Where they fall down is they don't take that fourth step on the screen right there. They don't take the action necessary to put it in place. That makes a difference. And then stay away from the distractions, right? Because, you know, the last thing you want to do is get a fancy car and you get it all shined up nice, and you really think you're ready to go. You're ready to go pick up the girl, take her on a date, go to town, got this nice fancy car all set up and ready to go, right? There's only one problem. You forgot the engine. That car looks beautiful, doesn't it? Man, I'd love to have that car, except for one problem, right? It's very obvious. There's no motor in this thing. Those targets belong right there. That's the job that targets and these marketing programs that you guys promote and use, that's what drives the car. That's what gets you to where you want to be. You've got to be able to put those things in place to get you where you want to be. Don't be driving a car like we got on the screen. Just do what you need to do. Take care of business.
Thank you, Scott. This has been really fun, and I hope to do more of these with you and other people at White Commercial. And so this has been really fun, really informative. So we'll get this out there. And I just wanted to let people know that Dylan Lindeman, Jeff Kleinschmidt, Tyrone Belas, myself are all available to talk. Our cell phones are on the homepage of the website. They're on the bid sheet page where you all go to look at what our bids are doing. So we're all here to talk about grain marketing, about the markets, and our facilities are open. We have our guys there to receive your grain. We're still cutting checks for grain. We're preferring to mail those over anything, just for the social distancing and to keep everybody safe. But we are still conducting business here at Dakota Plains, and We continue to want to keep earning your business. We're very grateful for the business that we do with everybody here, and we appreciate interacting with the farmer, and we have many great relationships with growers, and it's a lot of fun for us. So we hope this was informative. Reach out to us on our cell phones that are on the website if you have any questions. And again, my name is, I don't know if I introduced myself, but if you don't know, my name's Colin Wilson. I'm a grain originator here at Dakota Plains, and just having a lot of fun doing it. And so thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate it.
Hey, it was my pleasure. Thanks, Colin.
Yep,
I hope
thank
to
you.
do this again real soon.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thanks.
All right, thanks.